Now my honor to introduce our featured speaker for the evening, Ms. Camila Chavez. Camila is the daughter of Richard Chavez and Dolores Huerta, the niece of the late Cesar Chavez, and the executive director of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. When we learned last week that Dolores would be unable to speak with us this evening, we were delighted that Camila stepped forward to join us. Of course, we didn't know this would happen when we selected Generations of Inspiration as our theme for the evening. But we just roll with it, and now it's all the more apt. Camila was born an activist and raised in La Paz, California, at the headquarters of the United Farm Workers Union. She's a graduate of Mills College and of the Women's Policy Institute of the Women's Foundation of California. She's profoundly committed to the cause of social justice and gender equality, and an accomplished leader and advocate in her own right. As a teenager, Camila participated in the march from Delano to Sacramento to bring attention to farm worker rights. The march was 343 miles long. Such marches are arduous, but transformative. I know this for myself. 40 years ago, when I was 14, I walked a mere 120 miles from San Francisco to Modesto in the UFW's March on Gallo. That was the first time I saw and became inspired by Camila's mother, Dolores Huerta. When we walked into Modesto, 20,000 people were waiting to greet us, chanting, "Huelga!" And on the stage, this tiny woman, Dolores Huerta, was encouraging us and urging us to join together and helping us feel the power of our connection with each other and our shared commitment to social justice. Dolores was awesome. I will never forget it. Indeed, to understand Camila, one must appreciate the accomplishments of her amazing mother. From co-founding the UFW with Cesar Chavez and leading the successful grape boycott in the 1960s, to continued leadership in the decades that followed, Dolores has led a life of activism, passion, and commitment to social justice that is an inspiration to all of us. In 2012, President Obama presented her with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, describing her as one of America's great labor and civil rights icons who has devoted her life to advocating for marginalized communities, noting that she continues to train and mentor new activists to walk the streets into history. Camila is now walking those streets as a co-founder and executive director of the Dolores Huerta Foundation. The foundation operates in agricultural communities in the Central Valley, developing grassroots leaders to pursue social justice through systemic and structural transformation. As executive director of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, Camila has spearheaded over 40 grassroots community organizations working on neighborhood improvements, and has led a successful campaign for just wages for farm workers in the Southern Central Valley, and worked on campaigns to defeat Propositions 73, 85, and 4, which would have restricted reproductive rights, which I think Andrea worked on too, because I remember those. And she has developed and implemented a campaign to prevent teen pregnancy. Like Dolores, Camila is both an activist and a mother, and is continuing the proud tradition of creating generations of inspiration. To understand what this means in practical terms, Dolores explained her philosophy of parenting in a recent interview, saying, "A lot of mothers think, oh, I've got to give them all these toys to keep them entertained. But that's not what we ought to give our children. We need to give our children a love of social justice. Take those children out there on marches. Talk to them about issues. They understand, even when they are little ones. They understand the issues of justice because they are young and they are idealistic. So think of the impact you are going to have on that child 50 years from today." Camila is one such child. born and raised an advocate and an activist. We are grateful that she is here to remind us of her mother's legacy, and we are honored and inspired to reflect on that point 50 years from this evening to see how far we will have come. Please join me in welcoming Camila Chavez.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me to share this special evening with you. I feel so honored to share this podium with such amazing women. And Dolores Huerta, my mother, sends her regrets that she could not be here with us this evening as well. Tonight I was hoping to share just a few thoughts on the importance of community organizing and leadership development as you all, as legal advocates, provide the legal and advocacy services that you do. And I wanted to give you some examples. Well, we know, so we'll start with the UFW, that Cesar and Dolores faced enormous challenges and legal hurdles in their first years due to injunctions where they were basically not allowed to have picket lines anywhere but 50 feet up in the air. And other, legal barriers, but thankfully there were dedicated attorneys. I don't know if any of you have volunteered with the UFW. I know Nancy, anybody else volunteer with the UFW? It seems everywhere I go, I always meet folks who, volunteered in the 60s and the 70s. And thanks to those dedicated attorneys who worked for $5 a week and then got raises to $10 a week, that, they were, and we were, as a farm workers union, able to improve the working conditions and eventually the lives of thousands of farm workers, not just in California, but throughout the country. We know that attorneys were able to help dissect what were the laws in California that needed to be adjusted, and being able to share this information with the farm workers who then advocated for the California Labor Relations Act, which gives farm workers the right to organize, and California is the only state that has that law. And once the farm workers were able to vote for a union, it was then Dolores who actually trained them how to negotiate their contracts. They were right there in the negotiating room. And so we continue to use this model with the Dolores Huerta Foundation of really empowering people to help form policies and laws that affect our lives. As Nancy said, our mission is to create networks of organized communities pursuing social justice through systemic and structural transformation. So as a nonprofit, we don't help individuals, but we really look at what are these larger kind of policy issues that we can address. We have this organization, it's called Vecinos Unidos, United Neighbors, and that's where we go into communities using the house meeting model, the same model that Cesar and Dolores were recruited by Fred Ross Sr. in the 50s. We use that model where we basically train organizers to speak to people in their homes. And we don't tell people we're training them to become organizers. We just say, can you invite friends, families, and coworkers to your home for a meeting? We have a really important message that we'd like to deliver. And once we get people in that intimate setting, we talk to them about how when folks take responsibility, when they commit to working with their neighbors, that they can make significant change. And we then give them the examples of how people just like them, immigrants, people who don't speak English, that they, poor people, right, have made significant changes and improvements in their communities. A lot of the changes are just have to do with infrastructure. The communities where we work really look like third world, kind of communities where there were, for example, one neighborhood of about 26 residents who did not have access to the sewers, the system. So their neighbors to the left and then it was to the right, but this plot of land somehow did not get that connection, and because it was so expensive to constantly clean out the septic tanks, that many of them just set up makeshift outhouses outside, would use the restroom outside, and it was very dangerous, in the situations that they were living in. So we were able to help them figure out how to become their own advocates. They invited the county supervisor to their neighborhood to show them exactly what, the makeshift outhouses and how people were living, and were able then to put pressure on that county supervisor to get the USDA to come in and provide the money that was needed to actually provide, create and establish the sewer system. So those are, there are more examples that we have, and I actually wanted to share about two of our community leaders. Both of them are Mexican immigrant women who were both recruited through the house meeting model. Leticia Prado is a mother of two in Weed Patch, California. And who here knows where Weed Patch is? Has heard of Weed Patch? Okay, well, the Grapes of Wrath was took place in the Sunset Labor Camp, which still exists there in Weed Patch. And when I met Leticia, it was a house meeting, but it was outside of the house in this actually empty kind of dirt lot. And we were asking the community members, what improvements would you like to see in your, we'd already gone through the wrap of, when people come together and they make that commitment. And then we asked, what would you like to see? What changes would you like to see in your community? And all of them agreed that they wanted to see their schools improved. That there were issues about pesticides being sprayed on fields nearby. They weren't sure what those pesticides were and what the damage that might cause, to their children. They wanted fences around the schools because there had been some safety concerns of children just leaving campus, or strangers that shouldn't have been on campus coming on campus. And they also thought that they should have water filters with cleaner water. So we helped them form their first petition, but they're the ones who took it to the school board, presented their petitions, and the school board members said, well, we would like to help you, but we actually don't have the money. So what do you all think as community members of passing a school bond measure? And so they learned what a school bond measure was, and they said, that would be a great idea. We're happy to tax ourselves. And they went door to door, and Leticia Prado and her husband and her children, they went and spoke to all of the voters in their community, and that school bond measure passed with over 70% of the vote. And so as a result, they actually got all of the things that they had asked for, and a brand new gymnasium in their middle school, which folks from Bakersfield actually come to use their gymnasium because it's so nice. After a while, Leticia, was proud of this accomplishment and continued to go to the school board meetings and decided, I can be on the other side of that school board. I should be making these decisions. What does it take to run? And so she actually ran for school board, and now is a school board member. And she also is a member of the water board in her local town as well. So she sits on two local boards, and this is just one example of the grassroots leadership, right? I also want to share about Lupe Ortiz, who's a mother and grandmother in the neighboring town of Arvin. She was also recruited in the house meeting, and I believe when she came on in 2008 is when the neighbors and community members had decided that they wanted to pass a 1-cent tax because there were services such as the fire and police that needed more funding, and so they said, okay, well, we can all tax ourselves this 1-cent tax increase. And this is a community that has 40% unemployment. Okay, most 90% of them are agricultural workers, and so they successfully passed that 1-cent tax increase. She ran for school board a few years later, and just recently the school board recognizing that they need more funding for infrastructure improvements. Some of their schools do look like jails. They asked the community, would you support a school bond measure? And they just passed another school bond measure in Arvin, California, where all of the schools will receive infrastructure improvements. In the same little town of Arvin, California, there are now 3 new city council members that are all 25 or younger, have taken over because, again, they have also received some leadership training and realizing, well, we can, be on this board and make these decisions. And so I just wanted to share how Leticia and Lupe are just these 2 examples of many people's lives who are being changed and transformed as they learn how to advocate. And that, for us, is so important, that once we can teach people how government works, school boards, all of that, that they can then advocate for on the local, the state, and the national level. And just as Leticia and Lupe are teaching their children and grandchildren and being that model, my mother Dolores was that example for me. Being my first feminist teacher, she was working so hard in the union and advocating for workers' rights that she was away from home for a long time. I don't know if anybody heard the KPFA interview this morning. There was an author that was on, and she was also talking about how her parents were spent many years in jail, and how they were activists, and how and now with her own children, how she's teaching. So it was just an interesting thing, which reminded me a lot about our family and raising my children as well. But and the funny story is that my mom was gone so much that I actually used to call my dad Mama. He was my mama. So, but the thing about Dolores and her accomplishments is that when she started lobbying in the 1960s, pre-UFW, she was working for an organization that her and Cesar were both members of, the Community Service Organization. She was just one of 2 female lobbyists in Sacramento, and at that time, women still had to wear skirts to go into the Capitol. So of course, there was a lot of sexism and harassment that she experienced, but that didn't stop her. She negotiated contracts with growers, led national boycotts, became a national spokesperson for the most impoverished workers, and her example of her dragging us everywhere, literally, on the weekends. We did, we weren't involved in organized sports, or I tried to, take ballet when that didn't work because that was just too structured, and, our weekends were really all about marches, and they didn't sit there and tell us about, social justice or political theory. It was really just leading by example. And so that's what I'm trying to do with my children as well, and I'll encourage you all to do the same with the young people in your lives. One thing that is really important to us is that, and what Leticia and Lupe learned, is how we hold our elected officials accountable, right? And so we teach people that we hire elected officials on election day, and we can also fire them when they don't come through for us. And I wanted to share a current battle that we're in Kern County. We're facing an education crisis. Kern High School District is the largest high school district in California, and it has a racially and ethnically diverse student population. 62% of the students are Latinos, 25% are white, and 6% are African American. However, Kern High School District has the highest rates of suspension and expulsion. We're 4 times above the state average and 7 times above the national average of suspensions and expulsions. And guess who the majority of those students are who are getting suspended and expelled? Latinos and African Americans. African American students are expelled at 500% above the national norm, and Latinos at 400%. So when this was brought to our attention a few years ago, of course, we hopped on it to find out, okay, what's going on, because our organization, although we had helped, the vecinos and supported them in their different fights for education improvement, this was something where we realized, wow, we have a serious crisis on our hands. And so parents and youth for the last couple of years have been advocating for alternative discipline methods. We know that these racist practices of the current high school district can't continue. And we also know that there are alternative discipline methods that are being used in other places, Oakland, Los Angeles, throughout California and the country, programs called Positive Behavior Intervention Supports and Restorative Justice, which another speaker was on KPFA this morning as I was driving in to the city talking about restorative justice. So although we have been advocating, we don't feel that the current high school district board is actually taking this serious enough. And so last October, we actually filed a lawsuit. And we're working with several public interest legal firms that are that have filed this lawsuit based on racial bias. And so we hope that we succeed, but we know that we can't just depend on that lawsuit. So we're continuing to work with students and parents on community organizing and making sure that we still have this consistent presence at school board meetings, and that during the elections, when we have, when they're up for re-election, that they are out there educating their neighbors and local voters about opportunities. So in November, we were community members were able to vote one ally onto the board. So we have 1 out of 5. So anyways, long ways to go, but we of course are gonna hang in there. And working with our attorneys is a very, I think, complicated process. There's a lot of legalese that goes into it, and so it has been our responsibility as a Dolores Huerta Foundation to help community members understand what's going on, but then also to make sure that their input is provided. And so just wanted to kind of drop that seed, as you all continue your work, to really partner with community leaders and advocates, and making sure that the community members are right along with you in your legal fights, for policy victories and all of that, because we know that legally we can accomplish amazing victories, but these victories are even stronger when community members are able to provide that input and can consult throughout that process, right? We've formed the Current Education Justice Collaborative, and we have a variety of community members, including teachers, because we think that this is a great thing to do, but if the teachers are going to have to implement these alternative methods, we want to make sure that it's something that they are agreeing to. And so anyway, so this is just, I wanted to share, the current battle that we are in here in Central Valley of California. The farm worker struggle continues, and just like iAngel and all the great work that you're doing, we can all support each other. So I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing, and the women who are empowered, right? Once they get employed and become these leaders, and really then teaching them the next steps, right? How to become advocates, and then going on, moving up, hopefully, to these local boards, state boards. Dolores was speaking to a group of college students, and she, in every college that she goes to, she encourages young people to think about running for office, especially women, because there was a survey done at an Ivy League college, and they asked the young men, how many of you feel prepared to run for office? And 80% of them said, yes, I'm prepared. And how many women do you think, when they asked the young girl, the students, the young women, how many do you think said that they felt that they were prepared? 30% of the young women felt that they were prepared. So we have a lot of work to do, right, to really have women understand their power, and to really take that power, and we will continue to do the work that we do, right, to be those examples. So thank you, everybody, for everything that you do. I want to end with a couple of vivas. If Dolores is here, that's how she would end. And so vivas, long live, and so we're going to do Viva la Mujer, and I'm going to say Viva la Mujer, and everybody say Viva.
Viva.
Okay? hold on, and then we're going to do Viva la Justicia, Long Live Justice, and Viva iAngel. That we continue to support this amazing organization and have many more celebrations and anniversaries. And then we'll end with Si Se Puede, it can be done. And this is a term that Dolores coined in a strike. A lot of people think Cesar Chavez came up with Si Se Puede, but it was really Dolores. And she likes to brag how that President Obama, when they met, he said, "Hey, I stole your slogan," and she said, "Yes, you did." Anyway, so I'll start off with Viva la Mujer! Viva! Right. Viva la Justicia! Viva! Viva iAngel! Viva! And we'll end with a Si Se Puede, an organized unity clap, because we know that working together we will succeed. So, Si Se Puede! Si Se Puede!
Thank you so much, Camila. When she was talking about the house meeting model, I wanted to share that there's a group that I got the pleasure of meeting their founder in Nepal maybe 8 years ago or something. And one sentence that she said made a huge impression on me. She said, you know, she had basically founded this movement that had changed so many things about housing rights for women in Nepal. And very humbly, she said, actually, it's all just about providing a space. And she said, you know, the women know what the problems are. The women know what the solutions are. They just need to have a space, and it has to be okay to bring their kids. So I just rented a space and bought a rug, and then it happened. You know? So kind of with that, I wanted to share that, you know, some of the way forward that we're looking at is really about creating spaces. So we're creating online spaces, not just for communication, like getting to share this with people on YouTube, but also virtual spaces where we can have the people who are leading these movements and people who come to us with projects from around the world, who can then tell the attorneys who are volunteering and paired up on their programs what it is that they're looking for, what kinds of research, and so that they can direct within that space. Even though we have borders, we have things like Skype that bridge those borders. And so kind of with that, I wanted to introduce two more board members, Yana and also Jolyn, to join us to talk a little bit about how we can use this space today.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Yana Dubakova, and I'm the treasurer of iAngel. What a wonderful evening. It's a truly full room of inspiring females. And I want to share with you my own personal reason why I joined iAngel in hopes to encourage you to join our network as well. I believe a democratic state is pivotal to protection of human rights, including gender equality. But I was born in Slovakia, Eastern Europe, under communist regime, where human rights were often violated. But as you might know, 1989 marked a tremendous change in the history of Slovakia and Eastern Europe with the fall of communist regime. And as a witness, also a teenager, I have still a lot of memories that influence me to this day. I remain greatly inspired by the many people from different backgrounds who are at the forefront of the revolution, helping to bring democracy to Slovakia. And based on my experience, I also believe in the possibility of change in a legal regime. And it's with that's precisely why I joined iAngel, because iAngel has begun successfully to create an action network connecting people who have the right kind of skill and power to make a change. So I wanted to ask you to consider joining our network as well. And I know a lot of you are already very much involved in supporting human rights, but please do consider how your skills, ideas, or monetary support can be of help to our cause. And with that, I want to invite my other board member to see an easy way how you can join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor be part of iAngel's board. I recently joined, and after moving from Washington, D.C. and working on women's equality issues for the last decade. So we're really happy to see such a great turnout tonight, and to see so many people who are interested in becoming involved. As you've heard earlier in the evening, we are on the front lines of a battle right now globally for women's rights, as they're increasingly backsliding in many countries around the world. That's why it's just so important what Nancy's created here and what Cecilia's taking forward. And we hope that you'll participate in one way or another in supporting the organization. And there are several ways to do that. Actually, if you notice on the back of your name tags, we have a card. And there are a few ways to participate. Feel free to participate in all of them. Choose one. Whatever works for you. Of course, we would happily accept donations. We're a nonprofit, and we need that funding support to be able to continue the work and to be able to grow the programs. But we also need volunteers. Obviously, it's a network of attorneys who are going to give their expertise to these issues worldwide, but we also need a variety of other types of volunteers too, so you don't have to be a lawyer to volunteer. Many opportunities to help out. And the third area is communications and social media, and we would really appreciate tweeting, putting on LinkedIn, starting a dialogue, starting a conversation about some of the issues pertaining to women's equality, the challenges we're facing, and the iAngel work in this area that's trying to support women and activists worldwide. And fourth, to make an introduction. And what that really means is that we would appreciate any ideas you have for partnerships, funding, others who will join the network, who will volunteer, and if you're willing to make an introduction to an individual or an organization or a company or another nonprofit or an initiative that would be relevant to this type of work, we'd greatly, greatly appreciate it. So I hope when you leave here that you'll be able to check one of these boxes at least and help us out in one way or the other. Cecilia, who you've met earlier in the evening, will happily accept your cards. Otherwise, the front desk where you checked in, if you want to put them there, then we'll collect them. And Cecilia and the rest of the team will be following up with each and every one of you after the event to sort of see what your thoughts are. So thank you so much.
That's what allows us to recycle your name tags.
So very simply, you know, if all of you can actually even take a moment, I think that there's some pens that we can pass around. So if everyone could just actually pull your name tag out and stuffed into the back of your name tag. And for those of you who are watching at home, you can use any of the links that are above on the website. But so for all of us here in human form, if you pull that second piece out of your name tag, and then you can check a box, so the pens will kind of float around. I think there are more people than pens, but check a box of whatever way it is that you think that you can help out. And then all you have to do is stuff it back into that same little envelope, and we'll collect them later, and that way we have your name and your information. So at this point, we wanted to welcome back MuseCrossing to share another song with us.
When I look into your eyes, it's like watching the night sky or a beautiful sunrise. There's so much they hold, and just like them old stars, I see that you come so far to be right where you are. How old is your soul? I won't give up. I'm here to stay and make a difference that I can make. Our differences, they do a lot to teach us how to use the tools and gifts we got. Yeah, we got a lot at stake. And in the end, you're still my friend. At least we did intend for us to work. We didn't break, we didn't burn. Had to learn how to bend without the world caving in. Had to learn what I got, what I'm not, and who I am. No, I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up. No, I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up. No, I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love. Still looking up.
Here's the part where we all thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank all the speakers for all the things, all the amazing inspiration that everyone has provided. I'm going to take a moment of generations of inspiration prerogative and recognize my mother, Carol Newman, who's watching. I hope you're watching, Mom. I hope you can figure it out. I know it's hard, but you know, I hope it's worth it. She dragged me along to so many marches, I can't tell you. Never-ending commitment to justice and peace and equality. And I am truly inspired by you, Mom. So thank you. I hope everyone, you know, board members, come on, you know, honorees, come on, Noreen, come on. I want to thank you so much to Kay Moser-Heilbaum for this wonderful event, for the beautiful room, and for the wonderful food and beverages. It is really special. Thank you again to Hanson Bridget for supporting us, you know, when we were like just nothing, and really believing in this thing that we're building. A thank you to Queen's Bench, all the support, and CWL and the Women's Intercultural Network. What an awesome thing, Marilyn. I love you. And to the law firms, we have just a little trickle of law firms now, but it's growing. So Hanson Bridget, Forella Braun Martel, the law offices of Christine Chen, Shepard Mullen, Mofo, Morrison Forster, and DLA Piper have all been very supportive to us. And we look forward to growing that network and getting even more support, because we're really moving and doing stuff, and we need the support. So thank you all so much. Camila. Thank you for the Si Se Puede. That really brought me back. Si Se Puede.